How's it going?
Good. Hey, Aaron.
Yeah, good. Hi.
Are you going to now put unaffiliated?
Unaffiliated. Uh-oh.
You're muted. Yeah, Vita just retired from
Oh.
Google last week. Last week
Wow.
was last week at Google.
Congratulations.
Happy retirement.
You're muted, Vita.
Okay, that explains. So this is not to be confused with the involuntary separations last week. My plan is to stay involved with SLSA and with other open source projects. The difference is that I now pay myself.
Very nice. Very nice.
Glad you're here.
Yeah.
Glad you're here.
Until it stops being fun, then I'll just,
That's fair.
Yeah.
All right, so why don't we get started? Welcome, everybody. Paste in the meeting notes if you could register your attendance. And remind you that we'll abide by the SLSA's and Linux Foundation Code of Conduct.
Let's go.
So we could welcome newcomers. There's no newcomers. But if anyone joins late, we could welcome them, I guess. There's nothing on the agenda. We should talk about the 1.0 progress and when we plan to do a release candidate. Did we talk about that last time? Yeah. I am working on the verification of the provenance section right now of like the steps in the spec of, what specifically to like how you verify. So expect a pull request sometime this week. We haven't made a ton of progress, certainly slower than we wanted to. We wanted to have a release candidate by now. We're obviously past that. Some of my colleagues did a pass over the spec, and I think the biggest, let me look up notes real quick. The biggest confusing part that they found was the, thanks David for taking notes. The enumeration of the build level 4 and the source track that are like not defined, and yet we have some requirements there. I've had several people mention that they found that confusing. I know we talked about this probably a couple months ago when we were first doing it. Balancing the desire to have some kind of placeholders there for people to know that there will be future tracks and to future levels, and also for people who are familiar with the old version to know where to have it. But the feedback so far was that it's kind of misleading. So I don't know who is going to take a crack at addressing that. But I wanted to bring up this group in case there's any thoughts on it.
If you don't mind, we want the document not to be confusing. I don't think that the best solution is to remove it entirely. I think moving it to a completely different section might be enough. Future directions or something like that. But just making it really obviously different, not where it is, if that makes any sense. Oh, and thank you, Josh.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I mean, I guess. So here, let me present what we have.
Yeah.
What we have right
And
now.
we already moved out some parts. We delegated the provenance, for example.
just so we're like on the same page of what we're talking about. Future requirements. So we have the two sections. One here is this possible future requirements, where we list parameter lists, hermetic, reproducible, and dependencies complete, which were just copied and pasted from the old version.
Right.
And if you click behind a click, you could see the old text verbatim.
Right.
Oh, this is, I'll send a link here in case anyone wants to go straight to it without having to find it. And then there is a section down here in their source control where, again, there's currently no requirements. But FYI, this was the stuff from the old version. So it like sounds like requirements, but it's also kind of not requirements. And then I think on the levels page, we have on the levels page, we similarly have level 4 not yet defined, and the source track not yet defined.
Yeah, I think the problem is it's in a section, the title of which is requirements. So this is the section, this is the requirements without the requirements. Let's see. I mean, that's what the very top level says, right? Where are we?
Yeah. I think
can we move it?
I think it's, sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, can we move to just like a completely different section and just make it super clear? Because I just don't want, what I don't want to see is removal entirely, because I think it is helpful, even though it's not, well, in the formal terminology, it's not normative.
Yeah, I think the specific feedback was that we're trying to build 1.0 as like a complete specification, and that it's like ready. So having things that are called like not yet defined makes it sound like it's not actually complete. Whereas really we're just trying to hint for like a future version, we expect something here.
Right. Exactly. And I don't think anybody would be surprised by a future direction statement or something like that. Just as long as it's very clearly, completely separated from the requirement section. If
David, I think you're onto something where maybe we have that just like kind of like a big link at the bottom here around like the future direction, and like maybe I don't know if you'd call it the roadmap per se, but and then we have a link that brings us right with this block right here of the not yet defined to this new page, which is the future direction. So that way it's still like
future directions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like another page here that's like future direction maybe.
Yeah.
And then on the other ones we could link to it.
Yeah, because that's a super fair comment, right? If we're releasing this thing that's supposed to be good and complete, and we just have a bunch of draft work in progress things, it doesn't look very good. So yeah, I think it's really good to bring it away and show a future direction.
There's actually a good side to this. It means that when they show up and look at the requirements, they only see requirements. If it's not a requirement or explaining a requirement, it's it's in something else.
Okay. All right. So I'll create an issue for this, and then to kind of summarize what we talked about, and then someone can create a pull request. If anyone wants to, please volunteer. Otherwise, someone from Google will pick it up. Yeah, Joshua.
I'll volunteer to do that.
All right,
Awesome.
great. Great, thanks.
I need to go and look at the whole thing now too. I'm starting to lose the bubble with all the little specific changes.
I'll write a note to the team who do that too. Okay, great. So here, let me actually put this into a subsection. Just to indent this. So what else on the 1.0 front? So we talked about the certification. Just to recap what we talked about in previously, it sounds like and there's some discussion on Slack as well, and in the various issues, like the certification program. It sounds like we want to have some sort of language in the spec that makes it clear that you need to. We have some text in Slack, I think maybe, that there needs to be a way for someone to know what trust level a particular builder is, but the actual process for establishing that and certifying is outside of the spec, and the actual establishment of the program is not a blocker for 1.0. I think that's a recap of the. Let me see if I can find it in Slack.
Mark, I just copy and pasted it into the doc.
Oh, you did the thread that was
Take
from Wednesday?
verbatim and the link to the thread, yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot. Great. Just wanted to highlight that for folks in case you're not like reading every single message in the Slack thread, because I think that's important. So we need to do that. Yeah, Chris had a list of things. Yeah. Actually, here, I'll put it right at the top of the list, blockers for v 1.0. This was from the thread. I just pasted in the meeting notes. I should this tab instead. So update the threats and mitigation page. I think we have an issue for that. Certification program, so not blocking, but having some text in the spec. Provenance 1.0, verification examples. I'm working on that now. I think the verification piece, I think in the thread we talked about that is a blocker for the release candidate, but more examples is not. Verifying artifacts, I think fleshing that out. Yeah, and then just the to-dos and so the terminology would not be a blocker for a release candidate, but we would want to get it by the time we call it stable. I just want to make sure everyone here is on the same page. Again, because not everyone follows Slack. Does this sound about right to folks? Any
I have one more thing
agreement
that
or
I don't.
disagreement?
One more thing. Whoops. Let's see. Let's see. I am not muted for a change. Okay, so Mark, I'm wondering something that's not on your list, but maybe should be done is maybe a couple crosswalks between this and let me help S2C2F, which is Microsoft's. I mean, they're viewing it from a different viewpoint, but it might be good to see if there's any conflicts to. So let me just write that, David. Maybe also a cross review of S2C2F and SLSA V1 draft. I mean, just, that doesn't mean necessarily changes needed, but if there's a conflict, I think it would be good to know now.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would call that not blocking for a release candidate, but blocking for a final. Do you agree with that?
Sure. Not blocking for release. Let me just make that note. For release, but maybe I would say block for final. I mean, Even if it turns out there's a conflict, that's not necessarily a killer, but I think it would be wise to know. And frankly, I would want there to be a good reason. I'm not expecting.
Agreed. Yeah. Like knowing it and doing the review itself is the blocker. And there may be further items that we would address.
Right. But at least we would be able to make an informed decision. Actually, both
So-
groups.
I think it's important for the parent working group of both efforts, right? The supply chain integrity working group.
Right. Would like to do this, but I don't think it should just be me. And I seem to keep getting pulled off on other emergency tasks that have to be done right then. A problem I'm sure none of you have. But if we could get several people to do that cross review, and either if one says to do something, the other doesn't say anything, I mean, that's actually expected. That would be expected behavior to me. But if they conflict, that's what I worry about.
Might be worth adding to the agenda for the supply chain integrity working group next week.
I realize now what, after this meeting, I will create an issue for the release candidate. So that way we could all agree and have like a punch list of things we want for a release candidate. And it would be, and then we could also add assignees so we know who's working on what. But then also it would be really helpful to know, like if folks could do a Passover and think like which ones actually are blocking a release candidate. My view for the release candidate is that anything that like a reader who's already familiar with SLSA can kind of get past is not a blocker for the release candidate, because we want to have the thing out the door as soon as possible. But if there's like a major missing thing or something that's like you just can't understand it without it, that would be. So it'd be really helpful to know if anyone does it pass and has opinions on things that like that really are the most important. I mean, just to make sure that we all sanity check, like the necessary and sufficient things for the release candidate. I'll send that out after this meeting and then send an update on Slack, a link to it in case people aren't subscribed on GitHub. Okay. Sounds good. The future direction. Okay, Joshua volunteered to tackle it. Joshua, can you create an issue for that?
Sure, will do.
Okay, that just describes a problem of being misleading, etc. That way we could track it and add it to the release candidate list. Okay. I think that's it from my end. Anything else? Going once. Going twice. Okie doke. All right. Well, good seeing everyone. It was a short meeting, and we'll speak together again over GitHub or Slack or something like that. Have a good week, everyone.
Good.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
Lauren.